Mr. Moore, how you
I'd
doing?
like to call my next witness, Peter Schiff. Peter, thank you for being here today. Let me ask you this question. Is it a crime if Wall Street loses money for their investors?
Well, it's not a crime. It's unfortunate for their investors. And, you know, I think a lot more money is lost on Wall Street because of government regulations.
Let me ask you this. You were involved with, you had some interchanges with the people from Occupy Wall Street. These were the movements that actually helped bring my clients to trial.
Yes.
And I wonder whether you agree with the sentiment of the Occupy Wall Street people, or you think that they were misguided.
Well, I thought they were misguided. That's why I went down there, as I think this trial is misguided. It's not the investment banks on Wall Street that should be on trial. It's the Federal Reserve banks. It's the Federal Reserve. They're the biggest counterfeiters of money. They're the big destroyers of capital. They are financing this massive growth in government spending, and it's the Federal Reserve working with Congress that has corrupted Wall Street, that has resulted in all the crony capitalism that we're talking about. And so I wanted to let the people at Occupy Wall Street knew that their anger was misplaced. I shared their frustration, but it was with government and central banking and central planning, not with capitalism.
And did you get that message across to these people?
Sadly, I don't think so, but I think I did get it across to the hundreds of thousands of people that saw the encounter on YouTube.
Now, what about maybe it might, if I can follow your logic to its extreme, maybe these people should occupy Washington, not occupy Wall Street.
Well, that's what I said. You saw the clips. But yes, they should occupy Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House. Now they should probably occupy the Supreme Court, too. But there are a lot of institutions that need to be occupied, but not Wall Street. And yes, of course, Wall Street made a lot of mistakes. How could they? Because they were all liquored up on Alan Greenspan's alcohol. And I've said this many times, President Bush often accused Wall Street of getting drunk. And I agree, they were drunk, but so was Main Street. The whole country was drunk. But where did they get all the alcohol? Right? Alan Greenspan was the bartender. Right? He liquored everybody up. And of course, people act stupid when they were drunk. You should have seen how some of the people were acting last night over at Tao.
So let me ask you this question, my final question for you, and this is an important one, and it's really
I wasn't at Tao last night.
Well, you missed out on a pretty good party.
The essence of my defense of Wall Street.
But at least the hangovers you get from that alcohol wear off.
So this is the question. At least when Wall Street makes bad decisions, the people who lose money, right, are the investors and people on Wall Street themselves. And isn't that the way it should be?
Well, that's the way it should be, but now, unfortunately, that's not the way it is.
So this is the point I'm getting at. We've created this kind of protective bubble over Wall Street and over the big banks with too big to fail and all of these bailouts, right? And so now we have a system that Wall Street has almost been incentivized to take the big risks because of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the too big to fail. And isn't that what is really putting investor money and taxpayer money at risk, not the behavior?
Well, absolutely. It's something called moral hazard.
Right.
And in fact, all of the too big to fail banks, instead of failing, are now even bigger.
Right.
And you know what? They're still going to fail. But now it's going to cost us even more because we've taken these troubled banks and we've made them even more toxic. We've simply numbed the pain with the stimulus Novocaine, but it's going to wear off.
So if we got rid of too big to fail, if we got rid of Wall Street bailouts and big bank bailouts, wouldn't Wall Street be a healthier place, and wouldn't investors even make more money, and wouldn't mom and pop stores get access to more capital? In other words, isn't government the protection that they provided, this what George Gilder caused this incestuous relationship between government and Wall Street, isn't that the core of the problem here?
Well, absolutely. And part of the problem is there's so much money. Wall Street isn't really fulfilling its function as an allocator of scarce capital. It's been turned into a casino by the Federal Reserve with 0% interest rates, that destroys capital, because capital comes from savings. It comes from underconsumption, and no one's going to save if the return on savings are zero. So instead of having legitimate savings, we just counterfeit money out of thin air and feed it through the economy through Wall Street, but that is not producing legitimate economic growth.
Do you think that the rich pay too little tax in this country?
I think they pay too much taxes, along with just about everybody else. But particularly the rich.
Do you think that the rich pay at least their fair share, or is the allegation true that they don't pay their fair share?
They pay a lot more than their fair share.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you both gentlemen. Mr. Frank, your witness.
Thank you, Mr. Schiff. Is it your view that the high paydays on Wall Street have lured the best and the brightest to go there in disproportionate numbers?
Yes, although I don't know that they're as bright as they think they are, but they're there.
44% of Princeton's graduating class took positions in the financial services industry in 2007, and they're very bright. Whether they're as bright as they think they are is a good question, I agree. Can you think of anything useful that having all that talent on Wall Street has accomplished for our society?
Well, sure. I mean, we've mentioned some of the great success stories, but I think
more recently,
well, companies like Apple and companies they're able to increase their scale because they're able to tap into money through public offerings. But I would say that no, I'd say that we're wasting a lot of talent because the government is subsidizing Wall Street to the detriment of the real economy, and those subsidies need to end. And when that happens, if there's not so much government money and Federal Reserve money flowing through Wall Street, one of the things that the occupiers were so upset at was they perceived that government was for sale because the rich were buying influence. And that's true, but the problem is once you give the government the influence to peddle, you can't blame the private sector for trying to have that power used for their benefit instead of by their competitors to their detriment. But the solution is to take the power away from government, and if we do that, then there won't be these oversized profits on Wall Street, and maybe we'll have more people from Princeton or our alma mater, UC Berkeley. Maybe they'll start doing something more productive with their lives.
Do you think it would be better if more of them went into engineering, medicine, and research than cooking up fancy
and I think we'd be a lot better off if a lot of people just skipped going to those universities altogether. I don't think I think you can learn more, on the job from people who are doing things instead of from people that weren't competent enough to do things, so they ended up teaching.
Well, that would be me. So let me see if I understand your responses to the questions correctly. It's government who has given Wall Street the power to write the rules in their own interest, which in turn has resulted in enormous paychecks for them. That in turn has drawn a lot of talent into Wall Street. Whether or not the talent needed a fancy degree to get to be smart is an interesting question we'll put to one side. I agree. Can we then agree that you're in effect a witness for the prosecution whose case is based exclusively on the idea that government needs to take away the power that they've given to Wall Street to create these enormous rents that are drawing all the talent into the industry?
Not quite. We need to take the power away from government, and then the power will leave Wall Street.
We've got a deal.
But the people that should be on trial are the government operators that made it all possible. Wall Street is just playing the distorted deck that it was dealt. But if we stop that, if we level the playing field and have a free market and take away all the subsidies and guarantees and go back to sound money and let interest rates go up so that there's real capital funding productive uses of resources, and of course if we get the government out, if we get the Federal Reserve out, then Congress can't run these huge deficits if there's no one there to print the money to finance them.
Thank you.
All right, thank you both very much. You may be excused, Mr. Schiff.